We just, the vacant seat is now gone.
Right, exactly.
Mojo. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
You got your, we all got your.
Well, I want to begin this review session by welcoming our newest commissioner, Raj Ramprasad. We are so pleased to have you here.
Yeah, gotta push the button.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here, and I look forward to working with you all. And
Just a little bit of levity among the commissioners. It's the fact that we sit in alphabetical order, and so Raj has shifted the seating order, so we're all getting accustomed to this new world order. And with that, Mr. Secretary.
Yes. Before we begin our presentation, our agenda, we have a presentation on the M-Crown study. Jonah Rogoff of the Brooklyn office is here to present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Before certification of the following two private applications, 1010 and 1050 Pacific Street, the department would like to brief the Commission on the M-Crown study and share a draft framework to provide additional context for both projects. Over the past several years, the department's been working closely and engaged with Community Board 8 in Brooklyn and other stakeholders on developing a framework which seeks to support a vision of both housing and job growth. The M-Crown study area is shaded in red and located in the northwestern part of Crown Heights, Brooklyn, primarily in Community District 8, but also a portion in southern Bedford-Stuyvesant or Bed-Stuy, located within Community District 3. Just taking a borough-wide lens for a moment, we view M-Crown as part of a network of employment nodes with strong access to public transit, including regional access to the Long Island Railroad, or LIRR, as well as access to the central business districts of downtown Brooklyn and lower Manhattan. In a similar vein, we also view the study as supporting both the citywide initiatives of Housing New York and the New York Works plan, and it's twofold focused on both promoting affordable housing and job growth. Geographically, the study area spans 16 full or partial blocks, zoned M11, generally bounded by Vanderbilt Avenue to the west, Nostrand Avenue to the east, Atlantic Avenue to the north, and Bergen Street to the south. The surrounding context is primarily residential and includes the neighborhoods of Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, Clinton Hill, and Bed-Stuy. Fulton Street and many of the avenues running north-south serve as local retail and service corridors. And the area is very well served by public transit, just a couple of blocks from the A and C subway lines, the Franklin Avenue shuttle, which runs through the study area, and the LIRR station, both at Atlantic Terminal and at the corner of Nostrand Avenue in Atlantic. To the west of the study area is the Atlantic Terminal Transit Hub, along with Pacific Park, a New York State-led multi-block development project. Just to provide a little historic context, the top left photo shows a view of Atlantic Avenue from the late 1800s, when a freight and passenger rail ran at grade. During this period, many blocks surrounding Atlantic Avenue developed in close connection with the freight rail line, with neighboring businesses supporting the production and movement of goods. In the early 1900s, as shown in the photo on the top right, the avenue was excavated and the freight rail service was actually discontinued. And then the passenger rail line was brought below ground in what continues to serve as the LIRR. As automobile and truck-based transportation rapidly grew over the coming decades, many parking and auto-oriented businesses proliferated in the area, a trend that continues in the present day. just taking a look at an aerial from 1924. The M Crown area has historically been mixed use, and in the area shown in a dotted red or dashed red line, you can see housing often interspersed with industrial and commercial use. And then looking at the same dashed lined areas, over time, much of the housing gradually transitioned to parking, warehousing, and vacant land. And a major driving force for this transition has been the M11 zoning, which, unchanged since 1961, has served as a major constraint on growth due to its low permitted FAR and high parking requirement. And with the exception of a few warehouses and auto-oriented businesses, very little development has occurred since that time. Currently, the area contains a diverse mix of uses with several lots used for, as I mentioned, parking and storage, along with pockets of commercial and non-conforming residential uses. While the zoning has remained mostly intact, nearly all of the surrounding area has been contextually rezoned as part of department-led studies, including most recently the 2013 Crown Heights West rezoning, which covers most of the area directly south. Just a few photos of the surrounding area, although you'll see more in the presentation. Here's just a couple of views of Atlantic Avenue, which is a 120-foot wide corridor that consists mainly of auto-oriented and other types of commercial use. On the eastern part of the study area is the Bedford Atlantic Armory, shown in the top photo on the left side, and which is also across the street from a large gas station and car wash. In the bottom photo is a view of the south side of Atlantic Avenue between Nostrand and Bedford Avenues, which has many intact loft-style buildings. And then the mid-blocks between Grand Avenue and Classen Avenue contain many vacant and underdeveloped lots used for parking and storage, with a few clusters of non-conforming residential. And then finally, the mid-blocks further east between Classen and Franklin Avenue are a bit more active with industrial and commercial businesses, with several buildings that have been recently renovated or adaptively reused. So as part of our internal work, we analyzed recent employment trends and just wanted to highlight that while jobs in manufacturing and wholesale sectors have decreased somewhat, the jobs in office and service-based sectors, particularly in food and drinking establishments, have grown substantially. And this complements kind of what we found when we analyzed local land uses. So based on our analysis and ongoing engagement, we've been working on a land use framework that achieves a balanced vision for mixed use growth with three primary goals. So first, to allow greater density in an area with strong public transit access and well connected to other employment nodes. Second, supporting new housing with affordable housing opportunities pursuant to MIH. And third, promoting job generating uses and specific clusters of non-residential. So earlier this year, we shared a draft framework which identified three sub-areas. We'll just provide a quick overview of those and their strategies. In the Atlantic Avenue sub-area shown in red, we believe that a higher density mix of commercial and residential is appropriate, especially in light of the avenue being a 120-foot wide corridor. In the eastern mid-block, commercial and industrial sub-areas shown in purple, we recommend efforts to maintain and support existing clusters of commercial and industrial use with an opportunity for a higher density in the darker shade of purple along Atlantic Avenue. And then finally, in the western mid-block mixed-use sub-area, shown in yellow and orange, we believe that it's appropriate to encourage moderate density mixed-use development due to the many large underdeveloped lots that pose fewer use conflicts. In the mid-block areas shown in yellow, we just want to point out that we recommend a more modest contextual scale while encouraging greater density along the north-south avenues of Grand and Classen, which are brighter in a darker shade of yellow. Lastly, for further context, which we'll discuss in a few moments, outlined in red are the project areas for the two private applications which are proposed for certification today. And then also a third application which was recently certified, which lies just outside of the study area. And that concludes my presentation.
And I'll note that last week, Jonah and Amy Pivac and I had the pleasure of walking the entirety of the area with Councilmember Cumbo, and it's always very enlightening to see a neighborhood through the council member's eyes and to see how many people stop a council member as she walks through her district. Any questions for Jonah?
Well, yeah.
Sure.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
I'm just curious, from the council person's perspective, what does she envision for that neighborhood?
We've been working closely with her office, and I guess just taking a step back for a moment, this study is a team effort, so I'd also just like to recognize Alex Summer and Amy Pivac, who've been working closely with me. So, like I said, we're still working with the council member. I think broadly we're aligned on the use framework. But we're still trying to figure out the appropriate ways of mixing uses. It's an ongoing conversation, but I think the framework is a good start.
Yeah, it's been a productive working relationship with the council member. Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I noticed that, I don't know if we can put up the framework up there, but that, significant portion of the rezoning area is on one side of Atlantic. So could you speak to sort of what's occurring on the other side, and if the rationale is to create, similar zoning frameworks on both sides?
Can we have the framework back up on the screen?
It's residential on the other side.
Ground floor.
It's residential. Maybe.
Well, while waiting.
You can start responding.
Sure. So I'll just, appendix. Go.
Yeah, that was fine. That's fine.
So just to speak to the land uses on the other side. So this portion up to Classen is within Community District 2. There's a lot of similarities in the types of land uses, although this portion was rezoned as part of the Fort Greene Clinton Hill rezoning and does permit residential. So it's virtually the same, although there have been a few new mixed-use developments, primarily residential with ground floor commercial.
I guess I'm concerned, I'm asking about the commercial overlay for the most part. What do we envision happening on the first floor? Do we see balance? I anticipate some sort of balance of, double-sided activity on the ground floor there. Is that the goal here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
From my other side here. I just really wanted to say thank you for the presentation. And so often I recently have been complaining about manufacturing changing without there being planning involved. And you're definitely getting ahead of something that's about to start if it has not already started over there. So thank you for that. And I thank the whole department. Since you have all this great data, I'm just wondering if it makes sense going forward to also somehow incorporate commuting times into the data as we have more constraints on our public transportation, and there's so much thoughtfulness going into higher density residential and business or job development. one sign of success of these rezonings might be reduction of commuting time, meaning that you're drawing more from neighborhood for employment. So it's just an idea going forward.
That's actually a great suggestion and takes advantage of some new tools that we have, our new analysis that we undertake, which is called Travel Shed, in which when we look at areas, we can figure out the area or the geography from which you can get to a site within 15 minutes, half an hour, or an hour. And it's obviously not concentric circles. It very much reflects where the subways, the bus, and the ferry stops are. But we can actually, if it would be of interest to the commission, we could make a presentation on this Travel Shed and how we use it in our planning.
It would definitely be of interest to me.
Yes, Commissioner Delauze.
Jonah, thank you for this. I know that, let me try that again. I know that there's, the conversation with the community board is, probably dates back more than 5 years at this point. Is that right?
It has for the first couple years, it was mostly internal to the community board, and our engagement has really been over the past 2 or 3 years.
And what do you think has been the greatest change in the thrust when it was just the community board as opposed to when DCP became involved? You know, I was just somewhat familiar with it when it was more just the community board, and it seems to have certainly gone much more west than originally discussed. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think when we first approached the community board, we kind of, they were much more interested in kind of a type of requirement that applies to the whole area. And I think we tried to lend our experience in both land use and economic policy to steer them towards thinking about more like sub areas and understanding what are the, what's working already, what are the active uses in the area or nearby. And I think it's been particularly enlightening to see how this kind of fits within a broader lens of policy, both in Brooklyn and also citywide.
Also, it's a fascinating neighborhood that where for years, manufacturing and residential have lived cheek by jowl, and also the differences block by block. It's fascinating that that's an area that has opportunity because there are so many open storage, unused buildings that are there. Yes.
I'm just wondering too, considering the number of E-designations and/or brownfield sites along the corridor, I'm wondering how that may have played into the thinking as well. I think that's just something to discuss later, but I'm just aware of a lot of E-designated property, and not just because of the subway, but because of actual brownfield sites. I've seen a lot more applications come from the state for voluntary cleanup, which is great.
It hasn't been a main topic with the community board, but certainly as part of redevelopment within a manufacturing area, we almost invariably see potential need for remediation. And so we would certainly be looking into that further, and as both a standard practice, but also particularly when we're doing work in a manufacturing zone area.
Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Thank you for bringing this to us, Jonah. I'm curious to know what happens next. Is this the springboard to rezoning? Is the community board doing further work on this? Is it being used to inform private applications such as the one we're seeing today? Where's this going from here?
Well, I think as a first step, we want to see it inform private applications. We're still, refining the framework and understanding what, tools that we currently have or could have that could respond to.
But we thought it made sense to bring it forward when we had 2 applications simultaneously, to bring it forward while the work is still ongoing. But certainly these years of planning work made, from the department's point of view, the review of the applications much richer because we did have such an understanding of this unique neighborhood.
Right. So has this framework been embraced by the community board, or what is the status of this framework?
It's still a work in progress.
At community board level? Okay. As you indicated, it also is with a council member?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this isn't one that's secret. It is very, very well known out in the community because the planning process has been going on for a while.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, then on to the actual projects.
Yes. So this is a review session of the New York City Planning Commission for Monday, October 29th, 2018. The time is 1:25. The first item on the agenda is a certification of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 8, and Jonah Rogoff is our presenter.
There it is. So this is an application by 1010 Pacific Street, LLC, for a zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of a block from an M11 district to an R7D district with a C24 commercial overlay, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area, or MIH area, to facilitate an 11-story mixed-use development with a total of 154 residential units, 39 of which should be affordable, and community facility and commercial space located on the ground floor. Just a quick refresher, the project area is located in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, within Community District 8, and within the M Crown area shaded in red. The project area lies on the northeast portion of a block bounded by Pacific Street to the north, Dean Street to the south, Grand Avenue to the west, and Classen Avenue to the east. The surrounding area contains a mix of parking, commercial, and industrial uses, while the area outside the M11 zone is predominantly residential. Industrial and commercial uses are characterized by 1- and 2-story warehouse-style buildings, along with many lots that are used for open storage and surface parking. Residential buildings consist mainly of 1- and 2-family homes and multifamily apartment buildings ranging from 2 to 12 stories. As mentioned in the earlier presentation, Berry is well served by public transit, located near the C line, which has a stop at Franklin and Franklin Avenue and Fulton Street, as well as the access to the Franklin Avenue shuttle. Several bus routes run near the project area, including the B65, which lies 1 block to the south. Here's an aerial view of the project area outlined in blue, and the development site shaded in red. The project area encompasses 12 tax lots, which consist of 1- to 2-story light industrial uses, an auto-oriented business, open parking and storage, and 3 multifamily residential buildings, which are currently non-conforming uses. The development site is an approximately 26,000 square feet lot, consisting of a 2-story vacant former industrial building and an unimproved parking lot. The entire block, including the project area, is zoned M11, a manufacturing district that permits commercial uses and industrial use to a maximum FAR of 1, and limited community facility use to a maximum FAR of 2.4. And then new residential use is not permitted as of right. And just a quick note on the site is located on the mid-block, but we were very explicit in requesting that the project area extend to Classen Avenue, which is a north-south corridor, and really rationalizes the zoning district boundary. A few photos of the area. This is a view looking southwest at the corner of Pacific Street and Classen Avenue with an auto supply business on the corner. It's a view of the Pacific Street corridor with the proposed development site on the right. And then Another view of the site on the left, and the Classen Avenue corridor on the left, which shows the project area on the left side of that photo. The applicant proposes to develop an 11-story mixed-use building with approximately 145,000 square feet of floor area, totaling 5.6 FAR, with base heights of 65 and 95 feet, each of which is followed by a 15-foot setback, which would then rise to a building height of 115 feet. The proposed development contains 154 dwelling units, 39 of which would be designated affordable under option 1 of the MIH program, which would require 25% of the residential floor area be permanently affordable at or below 60% of the area median income, or AMI, with 10% of that floor area at or below 40% AMI. Additionally, as shown in the ground floor plan, there would be approximately 7,000 square feet of commercial space and 4,300 square feet of community facility space, which is intended to be a nonprofit-led arts center. And then 49 enclosed parking spaces would be located in the cellar level. Here's another view of the angle of Pacific Street with the proposed development on the right. To facilitate the proposed project, the applicant requests a zoning map amendment to rezone an M11 district to an R7D district with a C24 commercial overlay over the northeast portion of the block, which would extend 440 feet from Classen Avenue and align with the block center line. When mapped with an inclusionary housing area, R7D allows a maximum FAR of 5.6 for residential use and a maximum base and building height of 90 feet and 110 feet, respectively, which may be increased by 5 feet with a qualifying ground floor. Off-street parking is generally required for 50% of the dwelling units and optional for income-restricted housing units within the transit zone. The C24 is a commercial overlay that permits a maximum commercial FAR of 2.0 when paired with an R7D district. And when it is paired, it does trigger a requirement for ground floor non-residential use, which can either be commercial or community facility, to a depth of at least 30 feet. The C24 overlay allows a range of local retail and service uses, including grocery stores, restaurants, beauty parlors, mostly with low parking requirements. In addition to that action, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment to rezone, to create an MIH area with options 1 and 2 coterminous with the rezoning area. According to the applicant, the proposal would facilitate new opportunities for affordable and market rate housing in an area that's mostly underutilized, while promoting density of a mix of uses in an area well served by public transit. Lastly, just in the context of the previous presentation, department staff would just like to note a concern that while the proposal does seek to support the mixed-use vision of housing and job growth in the framework, it does slightly deviate from the scale and vision for the mid-block side street, which is proposed to have a more modest scale compared to the avenues. So we just wanted to point that out. That concludes my presentation.
Jonah, could you go back to the slide that shows the project site, the development site, and then the project area? I just wanted to highlight here, and the same will hold true on the next project, that the development site is a mid-block site, but for the inclusion of a broader project area that goes out to Classen Avenue, which is the Pacific Street is a side street, Classen Avenue is a commercial corridor. But for the inclusion, the department would not be recommending this, viewing it more as akin to seeking a BSA variance as opposed to the well-considered plan. Questions? Commissioner Deleuze.
So a couple questions. One, it would be great if you could unpack your statement a little bit more about the scale piece that you just mentioned. But the questions I had, it would be helpful when this comes back to get the information about the existing residential buildings that are there and which buildings may have rent-stabilized units or tenants that are subject to rent control. That would be helpful. And then it would also be helpful to know if there's already an intended tenant on the Art Center space. I mean, the way they're stating it, it seems very definitive, so it'd be helpful to get information about that. And then I'm assuming that your thought was to basically step down towards the mid-block. If you could maybe highlight that a little bit more.
Sure. So on the questions regarding the rent stabilization, I'd like to get back to you and just confirm with HPD. For the question about the scale, as the chair alluded to, we're still in discussions with the board and developing consensus. We don't have a specific zoning district in mind, but I think we were envisioning, not an R7D, but perhaps an R7A or less. And another consideration is the community board wants to see a vision of mixed use. And so we're trying to see not just what's appropriate for the residential, but how to kind of couple those together at the appropriate bulk.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Jonah, could you go to the rendering of the facade for the proposed building? So the 2- or 3-story brick building, is that existing, pre-existing?
Yes.
And that would contain the community facility space? What would that contain?
The community facility space is proposed to be on the ground floor, and they're only proposing to maintain the facade. So they're kind of maintaining this portion of
So it's gutted behind the facade?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And I think the applicant and the architect can speak more to that.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Well, it's just, I guess, an observation following up on Commissioner Deleuze's question about the rent-stabilized tenants. I was interested to note that the environmental assessment statement doesn't include any analysis of socioeconomic impact because they checked the box saying that it's producing fewer than 200 units. Yet they're also estimating that this development plus the rest of the block would total 212 units. So I'm kind of wondering how those two things square up, and we'll be interested in the follow-up information in response to Commissioner Deleuze's question. But I think it's important to understand what the fate is of the, 16 units that are in the area to be rezoned.
That's correct. We'll be sure to follow up.
Okay. Commissioner Efron.
Thanks. So just to put this squarely in the context of the earlier presentation that you gave, Jenna, this would be the mid-rise. Is that correct? Because it's a mid-block?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you want to give us a preview? I guess it's not appropriate what the high-rise will be.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
I think, as Jonah had noted, that this appears to be higher than what our notion of the mid-rise that we had envisioned. But again, as a department, we will present items for certification that are complete, even if we don't agree with them. And then we say so at the time of certification so as not to surprise folks. Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
The second item on the agenda, page 34, is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 8. Again, our presenter is Jonah Rogoff.
So, but while waiting for, this is an application by 1050 Pacific Street for a zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of a block from an M11 district to an M14 R7A district, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mixed-use or MX district, and a mandatory inclusionary housing or MIH area to facilitate an 8-story mixed-use development with a total of 103 dwelling units, 33 of which would be affordable, and commercial space on the ground floor. As mentioned, this is also within Crown Heights and within the Crown study area. The project area lies on the western portion of a block, bounded by Pacific Street to the north, Dean Street to the south, Classen Avenue to the west, and Franklin Avenue to the east. As noted in the prior presentation, the surrounding area contains a mix of parking, commercial, industrial, and auto-oriented uses, with residential located to the south and several public transit options within a few blocks. Here's a bird's eye view of the project area and the development site. The project area encompasses 10 full and 2 partial tax lots, which consist of 2 eating and drinking establishments, 2 one-story warehouses, a co-working facility, and open storage. The development site is an approximately 23,200 square foot through lot with frontages on both Dean Street and Pacific Street, and currently used as truck parking. We also just wanted to show the project area for 1050 Pacific Street in relation to 1010, which are right next to each other. The Classen Avenue frontage is shown in the photo above, and you can see this is the eating and drinking establishment, the co-working vacant lot at the corner. This is a mattress wholesale. This is a view of Pacific Street from Classen Avenue with the vacant lot on the right, and then the development site right over here. And a view of Dean Street looking from Classen Avenue with another eating and drinking establishment and the development site further up to the left. And then finally, a view directly of the development site, which is occupied by a Ryder truck rental business. The applicant proposes to develop an 8-story mixed-use building with approximately 105,700 square feet of floor area, totaling 4.56 FAR, with a base height of 62 feet, followed by a 15-foot setback, and then rising to a building height of 95 feet. The proposed development contains 103 dwelling units, 33 of which would be designated affordable pursuant to option 2 of the MIH program, which requires 30% of the residential floor area to be permanently affordable at or below 80% of the AMI. This is just another view of the other, the Dean Street frontage, just showing some of the variation facade. As shown in the ground floor plan, there would be approximately 15,800 square feet of commercial space, and then 42 parking spaces would be located in the cellar level. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant requests a zoning map amendment to rezone an M11 district to an M14 R7A district over the western portion of the block, which would extend 225 feet easterly from Classen Avenue. When mapped with an inclusionary housing area, R7A allows a maximum FAR of 4.6 for residential use and a maximum base and building height of 70 and 95 feet, or 90 feet respectively, which can be increased by 5 feet with a qualifying ground floor. Off-street parking is generally required for 50% of the market rate units and optional for income-restricted housing units within the transit zone. The M14 is a manufacturing district that permits a maximum industrial and commercial FAR of 2 with no off-street parking requirement. And then when paired with a residential district, is also subject to the mixed-use district regulations. In addition, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment to first designate an MX, or mixed-use district, and then also establish an MIH area with options 1 and 2, coterminous with the project area. Similar to the prior application, the applicant contends that the proposal would facilitate new mixed-use development opportunities with housing and affordable housing in an area well-served by public transit. And then just before closing, we just wanted to show kind of a zoning change map that includes both of the projects and the proximate outline of the development sites. And then just for reference, showing a quick version of the framework with the location of the project area and sites. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
And I'd just make a few observations. While these sites are very close to each other, the nature of Pacific Street changes markedly across Classen, and so that's why the different proposed zoning districts on the two sides. The other thing that this shows is the higher density area concentrated along Classen. And if you could go back to the prior slide. It also shows why, with both sites, the department would not support a rezoning, would not be recommending support for a rezoning of just the development sites. But when they are pulled forward towards Classen, we do think that that can be an appropriate zoning. They can be two separate appropriate zoning changes. And with that, I toss it open. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Chair, would you elaborate on the nature of Pacific Street? Because I was wondering why the distinction between the R7D and the M14 R7A.
Absolutely. So one distinction is the community board in our conversations. They really want to see a non-residential ground floor. So the applicants for 1010 Pacific are presenting a slightly higher density, partly to help subsidize the non-residential space, but also because when an R7D is paired with a C24 overlay, it does have that requirement. And then the applicants for 1050 Pacific are a bit more responsive as far as the scale that was envisioned with the framework and in consultation with the community board. And are mapping an MX district partly to not result in non-conformance for some of the industrial uses. And then I also just would add that by 1050 Pacific, these mid-blocks have slightly more concentration of pre-existing industrial use. So we recommended an MX district thinking about a broader framework that allows all types of uses to remain conforming.
So primarily, it wouldn't render the existing M1s, or whatever they are, non-conforming by virtue of a zoning change.
That's correct.
Exactly. The portion of 1010 is more residential, non-conforming residential. The block on which 1050 is located has more of a manufacturing character to it, although, again, every block is quite varied. Commissioner Delahoo's.
Similar to, although there are fewer residential units in this particular application that would be impacted, non-conforming, it'd be helpful to know how many how many are rent stabilized or have rent control status. And then, I would just ask the applicant when they come back to explain their rationale for option 2 versus option 1 in MIH.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. You mentioned that there is an existing ground floor eating and drinking establishment. Is it anticipated that they will remain?
We did analyze both as part of a seeker analysis. We think they have the potential to redevelop. Although one of them just recently opened and put quite a bit of investment to outfit the space. So we don't, I guess per seeker, we wanted to have a conservative analysis, but we don't anticipate that they would be redeveloped in the short term.
They're not part of the development site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, second application is certified. Thank you.
The third item on the agenda, page number 62, is a certification of an acquisition for continued use of a child care facility in Brooklyn Community District 5. Alexandra Patty Diaz is here to present.
Not this presentation.
Oh,
Yeah, this is a daycare, 15 stories. We're going to take care of all the kids in the neighborhood.
should be coming up.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a proposed action by NCACS and DCAS for a public facility acquisition to facilitate the continued use of Urban Strategies Daycare Center as a childcare facility. The site has been used to provide childcare since 1975 and was subject to previous acquisitions approved by the Commission in April 1995. The daycare is located in East New York, Community District 5, Brooklyn. The site is on the southwest corner of Sutter Avenue between Montauk and Atkins Avenue, within an R5 zoning district. C12 and C23 commercial overlays run along Sutter Avenue. The surrounding land use is predominantly residential with 1 and 2 family, as well as some multifamily buildings. The East New York rezoning area is located 2 blocks north to the project site. There is 1 community facility use around the project area, a church that is located on the same block of the daycare. The area is also close to public transportation. There are 2 subway stations along Pitkin Avenue, 2 avenues north of the center. Shepherd Avenue subway station of the C line and the Euclid Avenue subway station of the A and C line. The B14 bus runs along Sutter Avenue and has 1 stop on the same block of the center. The daycare is located on a 15,000 square feet privately owned lot. The building is 2 stories and includes a total floor area of approximately 35,000 square feet. I toured the daycare several times, the latest on October 9th of 2018 with ACS and DOE staff. The accompanying scope of work addresses the life cycles the building has. The daycare occupies approximately 32,000 square feet and currently shares the building with a small 2,600 square feet health clinic operated by the Health and Hospital Corporation. This application is for the acquisition of the entire building. The main entrance, as seen here, is located along Sutter Avenue, and it also has 2 entrances from the basement level facing Atkins and Sutter Avenue. The center serves up to 145 preschoolers, ages from 3 to 5-year-old, distributed in 8 classrooms. Children may attend from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. The center is staffed with 40 professional, paraprofessional, and support staff, and is licensed and subject to the established standards of ACS, as well as federal, state, and city regulations. The cellar floor includes the main kitchen, janitor's closet, several storage and mechanical rooms, and the basement, which is where you enter the daycare, includes the offices and 2 classrooms. All of them, including the bathrooms, appear in good condition. The first floor includes 4 classrooms and an outdoor play area, seen in the picture. The play area is improved with play equipment. It is fenced and secure. The second floor contains 2 classrooms, and the roof above the second floor is an entirely roof play area, which is now not used by the daycare center. Several suggested improvements for urban design have been included in the scope of work, including to add translucent colorful materials at the chain link fence on the roof play area in both sides of Sutter Avenue, as well as patch and repayment with child-friendly themes on the entrance in the ground floor. That concludes my presentation.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
My question will not surprise you. It looks as if the basement is the ground floor level.
Right.
It must be below grade. And the cellar contains a kitchen. I couldn't tell by any of the photographs. It looked as if there were no sprinklers. And I'm just wondering if there's anything you can tell us that might enlighten us as to why this one does not have a sprinkler included in its scope of work.
I believe that the sprinklers are included in the scope of work, but also there are several works that needs to be done in the basement in terms of flooding. Some of them have been done, and the next ones are going to be after the ULURP.
If you could go back and ask ACS or DCAS as appropriate
Okay.
about the sprinklers, that should be a standard part of any ACS presentation.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
All right. Item 4 on the agenda, page number 82, is a certification of a zoning map.
I didn't see it in plumbing. I apologize.
It's in a different place. Paragraph 1410, install new suitable fire sprinkler system covering the entire facility.
Yay.
I was sure it was a mistake, so I'm delighted. Thank you.
All right, item 4 on the agenda, page 82, is certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Brooklyn Community District 14. Our presenter is Anthony Grande.
This is a private application by 1640 Flatbush Owner LLC for zoning map and text amendments to facilitate the development of a new 13-story mixed-use building containing approximately 114 residential units and 2 floors of retail space in the Flatbush Junction neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 14. The project area is located in the east central portion of Community District 14, near the borders with districts 17 and 18. The surrounding area contains a mix of uses, including regional commercial, local retail, residential, and large institutional uses. Directly north of the project area is the Triangle Junction Mall, a regional scale commercial center with 3 floors of retail, including many large floor plate retailers, totaling approximately 260,000 square feet. Northwest of the project area is the campus of the Brooklyn College of City University of New York. The area is well served by public transit. 2 blocks north of the project area is the MTA 2 and 5 train, Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn College station. A variety of zoning districts are found in the surrounding area, including C8-2 and C8-4, which are commercial districts that do not allow residential uses. There are also R4, R6, and R6A districts, and C44A, which is a medium-density regional commercial district. The project area contains portions of 3 tax lots. The development site is outlined in blue on the slide here, which is an approximately 18,000 square foot irregular lot with frontage on Flatbush Avenue and Aurelia Court. The development site has a split zoning district condition, partially within the CA2 district or mostly within the CA2 district, and then with a small portion that's within the R6. And there are the 2 other tax lots partly included within the rezoning area, both to the west, as shown on the slide. Both of those lots contain 6-story apartment buildings. And each also has a split zoning district condition, partly within the CA2. The portion that's within the project area is within the CA2, and then the remainder of the lots are within the R6 to the south. CA2 districts are general service districts that allow a range of commercial uses, including automotive and heavy commercial uses, to a maximum FAR 2.0 with no fixed height limits, and do not allow residential uses. Our 6 districts are medium density, non-contextual residential districts that allow height factor residential development to a maximum FAR of 2.43 with no fixed height limits. However, with the quality housing option, residential development is allowed on a narrow street condition to a max FAR of 2.2 and a max height of 55 feet. The proposed development site is shown, again here outlined in blue. Until 2017, the development site had contained a gas station with small accessory convenience store. Although these structures still remain, the lot has been unused for approximately 1 year. The project area is bordered to the north by the Triangle Junction Mall, which also owns a small private alley running along the border with the project area that is used as a loading entrance for the mall. Most of the surrounding residential buildings are 6 stories in height, with the exception of the 20-story residential building directly across Flatbush Avenue from the project area. And then also, I would note there is another gas station that is still in operation, which is 1 block to the south on Flatbush Avenue and Avenue I, actually just slightly off the image here. This photo shows the development site. As you can see, the structures are there. However, the site is fenced off and is unused. And then also the mall is directly adjacent. This photo shows a portion of the development site visible on the left. This is from Aurelia Court looking east. And we can see the 20-story building also across the street. In this photo, we can see Flatbush Avenue, which is a 100-foot wide street. To the right there, to the left is Aurelia Court, and in the center, again, is the development site. The proposed developments would be a new 13-story, approximately 130,000 square foot mixed-use building containing approximately 114 residential units for a total FAR of 7.2. Pursuant to MIH option 2, 34 of the units would be permanently affordable MIH units at an average of 80% AMI. The building would contain approximately 30,000 square feet of retail floor area on the ground and second floors, and approximately 100,000 square feet of residential floor area on the levels above. The proposed building would rise to a total height of 142 feet, with setbacks at various heights pursuant to the maximum base height of 105 feet. The proposed building would provide approximately 40 parking spaces in the cellar level by a curb cut located on Aurelia Court, pursuant to a zoning requirement of 50% for the non-income restricted units. And this is a view from Aurelia Court. The proposed site plan shows the building mass concentrated on the Flatbush Avenue frontage of the lot and a step down to 7 stories along the Aurelia Court frontage and 2 stories in the rear. The illustrative ground floor plan is shown here. The ground floor of the building would be a full lot coverage floor containing retail uses and a residential lobby. The residential entrance would be located on Aurelia Court, and the commercial entrances would be located on both Aurelia Court and Flatbush Avenue. In order to facilitate the proposed developments, the applicants request two actions. First, a zoning map amendment. A reminder here is the existing zoning with the CA2 district and the sliver of R6. This map shows the proposed zoning districts. The proposed development site would be changed to a C44D district. And on the two non-applicant-owned sites, the CA2 district would be changed to an R6, essentially extending the R6 district to the north to cover the entirety of those two lots. Both of those lots contain six-story apartment buildings, as mentioned previously, and they are currently built to an FAR that exceeds what would be allowed under the R6 district. The resulting zoning map would have no split zoning district conditions on any of the three lots. C44D districts are contextual general commercial districts with a residential equivalent of R8A. They allow a range of commercial uses to a max FAR of 3.4 and residential uses to a max FAR of 7.2 with MIH compliance. The maximum base height is 105 feet, and the maximum building height is 14 stories or 145 feet. The second action, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment to create a new mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the proposed C44D district. The MIH area would include option 2. And that concludes the presentation.
Questions? Vice Chair Knuckles.
Is this a brownfield site by virtue of the
I don't believe
prior
so.
use?
No. I can check on that.
Commissioner Deleuze.
I'm just wondering what level of discussion there's already been with the community board about this proposal, and wondering what, if you know already, informed their choice of option 2. Certainly, if you happen to know that, great. If not, it's certainly something I'd like to know on the way back through, considering what the AMI levels are in the community board.
Yeah, I will discuss with the applicants. They can explain their decision to go with MIH option 2. I do know they have discussed with the community board, but I'm not sure if the MIH option was part of the discussion with the board, or if the board discussed which option they would prefer.
It would be within scope if it were to change to a different option. Moving forward, it'd be within scope to change it later.
Yeah, generally.
Since only option 2 is being listed at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
Item 5, page 95, is a non-ULIP referral of an authorization in Brooklyn Community District 14. Our presenter is Amrita Mahesh.
Commissioners, the applicant, ESP Marlborough LLC, is requesting a zoning authorization to waive location requirement of a second unit in an existing two-family detached residence in an R3X district. The applicant is seeking a waiver from the requirement that 75% of the floor area of one dwelling unit be located directly above or below the other dwelling unit in order to allow units to be located side by side. The CPC may authorize a waiver of this requirement, provided that the proposed development is compatible with the scale and character of the surrounding area, and the design does not give the appearance of a semi-detached building. The project site is located in the Flatbush neighborhood of Community District 14 in Brooklyn. The project site is located in an R3X zoning district, which permits a maximum FAR of 0.5 on lots with a minimum square footage of 3,325 square feet and a minimum width of 35 feet. The surrounding area encompasses R12 and R3X districts, developed primarily with detached 1- and 2-family homes, and R6A and R7A zoning districts characterized by multifamily residential buildings. Portions of Church Avenue are mapped with a C24 overlay. The most recent rezoning in this area of Brooklyn occurred in 2009, changing the zoning on the project site from R31 to R3X and affecting all or portions of 180 blocks in the Flatbush neighborhood within CD14. The goal of the rezoning was to preserve lower-scale residential character on mid-blocks and focus growth along avenues by changing non-contextual districts to contextual zoning districts. The project site is located on Marlborough Road between Caton and Church Avenues. Prospect Park is located directly to the north. Nearby public uses and community facilities include a PS 249, the Caton School, directly to the north of the site, a synagogue at Marlborough Road and Church Avenue, and the Caton Park Nursing Home at Caton Avenue. The project site is improved with an approximately 5,940 square foot, two-story, two-family dwelling with attic and cellar built in 1925. The detached home has a covered porch at the front. The building height is approximately 39 feet. Flatbush is a collection of historic neighborhoods known for detached homes surrounded by lawns and gardens and large apartment buildings. The detached homes are known collectively as Victorian Flatbush. Typically, the homes were built in the early 1900s and are 2 to 3 stories in height and are known for their distinctive architecture. The proposed project will maintain the existing FAR, square footage, building height, and lot coverage. The existing two-family dwelling will be restored on the exterior, while the interior will be rebuilt with a new layout. Each floor, first, second, and attic, will be split between 2 triplex dwelling units. The demising wall is shown here in the dashed red line. The entrance to both units will be on Marlborough Road through separate exterior front doors. 2 new doors will be located side by side within the same framed opening, where there is currently 1 exterior front door with 2 side light windows. The existing porch will be maintained. The applicant believes that the exterior appearance of the development will maintain the scale and character of the surrounding neighborhood of detached homes, while the interior division of space will create dwelling units of a size and character that are more suitable for current market conditions and housing needs. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
We don't often see this type of building type coming before the commission, and it reminds us of the tremendous diversity of the housing stock that we have in our city and the beauty of much of it. Question? Questions from the commission? Okay, then we'll refer this to the community board for 45 days.
Thank you.
Another borough. I think we saw one in the Bronx once, and now we saw one in Brooklyn.
Item 6, page 116, is a certification of a zoning map amendment in Manhattan Community District 6. Our presenter is Nabila Malik.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'll wait for this. This is an application by 245 East 53rd Street Realty, LLC, for a zoning map amendment to add a C25 commercial overlay to an existing R8B district along the interior portion of East 53rd Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, known as the project area, the yellow dotted line, impacting 27 properties, one of which is applicant-owned. The action would facilitate the conversion of a ground floor community facility space to commercial use in a new 6-story mixed-use development located at 245 East 53rd Street, known as the development site outlined in yellow, in Turtle Bay, Manhattan Community District 6. The applicant has also indicated that the proposed action would more accurately reflect the mixed-use nature of the project area, which is predominantly commercial at the ground floor level. The proposed project area in the black dotted line consists of 27 tax lots located on blocks 1326 and 1327 on East 53rd Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. The development site is outlined in red and has recently been approved with a new 6-story mixed-use building. The project area is adjacent to the Special Midtown District and is also within the Special Transit Land Use District. You can see the Lipstick Building is located on the end of the block on East 53rd Street and 3rd Avenue, the oval-shaped footprint. Second and Third Avenues are major north and south commercial thoroughfares, while East 53rd Street runs one-way west and contains mixed-use and community facility buildings, typically ranging in height from 5 to 12 stories. Buildings along the avenues to the east and west are typically taller, with commercial buildings rising up to 43 stories. The R8B district runs on the mid-blocks between East 48th and East 53rd Streets and 2nd and 3rd Avenues. The western sides of these blocks are zoned C66, and the eastern and northern portions are zoned C19, which permit a wide range of commercial uses as of right. The area is served by the E and M subway lines at Lexington and 53rd, 1 block away from the development site, and the 6th line at Lexington and 51st Street. These photos feature views of the new as-of-right 6-story building that has been under construction during this application process. And these are views of East 53rd Street. You can see there are a significant number of ground floor commercial establishments along the street. The development site is a 2,500 square foot interior lot located on the north side of East 53rd Street. The lot has 25 feet of frontage and a depth of approximately 100 feet. The site, which has been vacant for 30 to 40 years and used for surface parking, has recently been redeveloped with the as-of-right residential community facility building. The proposed action would allow the applicant to convert the site's ground floor community facility space to commercial use. The site consists of a new approximately 9,500 square foot 6-story building with a proposed ground floor commercial use and a total of 5 residential units located on floors 2 through 6. The development has a total FAR of 3.8 with a height of 60 feet. And the site is unable to achieve the maximum FAR of 4.0 due to slippery law regulations, which constrain the building's maximum height to 60 feet, the width of East 53rd Street. The proposed action would not change the bulk or design of the current development. The proposed zoning map amendment to add a C25 overlay to the existing R8B district would be mapped approximately 100 feet deep along the interior portion of the north and south frontages of East 53rd Street. And of the 27 properties that would be affected by the proposed action, 23 are fully located within the proposed overlay and R8B district. Of those 23, 19 already contain commercial uses, with the rest being community facility. And of the mixed-use commercial properties, the majority are legally non-conforming. Most of the mixed-use buildings in the project area are relatively narrow, with 18 to 40 feet of lot width and frontage, and contain eating and drinking establishments on the ground floor with residential units above, ranging from 3 to 6 stories. The area is an active shopping and dining destination for Midtown. And previous CPC actions have recognized East 53rd Street as a commercial thoroughfare, such as the 2017 Greater East Midtown rezoning and text amendment. The applicant seeks a zoning map amendment to add a C25 overlay to an existing R8B zoning district. The applicant has indicated that the proposed action is not sought to facilitate any additional density, but would allow for ground floor commercial use on the development site and would further recognize the predominance of ground floor commercial use along East 53rd Street. Thank you.
Questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Just a comment. I think this is one of the most exciting blocks in East Midtown personally. And I would just point out that it is a vibrant and seemingly non-generic group of establishments on that street. And it really does complement another proposal that came before us for the Citibank Plaza to be reestablished as someplace that was more pedestrian friendly and complements East Midtown. And I think it's a very positive step forward. It's not a question, really, just a comment.
Well, thank you. I give thanks to the applicant and kudos to the Manhattan office for realizing that with this application, they could bring into conformity an entire block that I think anyone would be hard pressed not to call a vibrant commercial block. Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
Thank you.
Item 7, page 134, is a certification of special permits in Manhattan Community District 8. In his first presentation to the commission is Connor Clark.
Sorry, we had a laptop, so I use this to advance? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little different setup. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a private application by Knickerbocker Plaza LLC and Yorkville Tower Associates LLC, which seeks 3 parking special permits to increase the capacity at 3 existing separate accessory parking facilities located in the Rupert Brewery large-scale residential development on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and Community District 8, between 2nd and 3rd Avenues and East 90th and 92nd Streets. The proposed action would increase the total number of accessory parking spaces at Knickerbocker Garage by 98 spaces, at Yorkville Garage by 205 spaces, and at Rupert Garage by 150 spaces, and make them attended facilities. The garages were originally approved as self-parking garages, but have functioned as attended parking for many years. The increase in parking spaces would not require any new construction, just redesigning the interior space to allow for more capacity. There are currently substantially more cars parked at each of the garages than their legal capacity permits. This application would bring the garages into conformity with regulations. The 3 towers were completed by 1975 with over 1,800 dwelling units and accessory garages as part of the Rupert Brewery Urban Renewal Plan and large-scale residential development, which included affordable housing, commercial and community facilities, and the 1-acre Rupert Park. The photo on this slide shows Rupert Park in the foreground in front of Rupert Towers on the left. Knickerbocker Plaza is in the foreground on the right in front of Yorkville Tower. The development site outlined in red on the map is located in the Yorkville neighborhood of the Upper East Side. The garages are located between 2nd and 3rd Avenues and East 90th and 92nd Streets. The immediate surrounding area is predominantly multifamily residential with ground floor commercial storefronts along the avenues. The development site is located within a C28 commercial zoning district, which is an R10 residential equivalent. The C28 zoning extends along 2nd Avenue and part of 3rd Avenue, which also has a C19 district. The mid blocks are predominantly R8B. The special transit land use district runs along 2nd Avenue. The 92nd Street Y is located at Lexington Avenue and East 92nd Street, which is at the upper left corner in blue on this map. The Q train runs along 2nd Avenue and the 456 runs along Lexington. Now I'll walk through each of the garages individually. All 3 garages were designed with multiple levels and ramps connecting the levels. These photos show the Knickerbocker Garage entrance on East 92nd Street and a view of the residential tower on the pedestrian mall on East 91st Street. The garage for Knickerbocker is located between East 91st and 92nd Streets with an entrance on one-way eastbound 92nd Street, 139 feet from 2nd Avenue. Upon entering through a 29-foot curb cut, cars would proceed down a ramp to the attendant at level G, where drivers would stop in one of the 10 reservoir spaces. They would exit the garage via the designated pedestrian areas to the street. People will pick up their vehicle in the same attendant area. About 25% of the overnight parkers are residents of Knickerbocker, and the overnight occupancy rate is currently at 180%, with 187 vehicles. There will be a speed bump and a stop sign located in the exit lane. That'll be installed by the applicant. So the garage closes at approximately 1 a.m. and opens at approximately 6 a.m., but an attendant can be buzzed during the hours when the garage is closed. So these are the 2 lower levels of the garage, which are accessed by attendants by a series of ramps. These photos show the exterior view of the Yorkville Tower and garage entrance on East 92nd Street. The entrance to the Yorkville garage is located 100 feet west of the Knickerbocker entrance on East 92nd Street. So you'd see Knickerbocker is to the right of this diagram. And it's also 300 feet from 3rd Avenue. Drivers would enter through a 29-foot curb cut and head down a ramp past the uppermost level. And this is the next level down, and they proceed to the attendant podium on this level, where drivers would stop in one of the 25 reservoir spaces, exit, and walk to the elevator to the building lobby via the designated pedestrian areas. Residents and non-residents can use the elevator to exit. The elevator only goes from the garage up to the lobby or commercial space and does not connect or allow access to the residential portion of the building. So going back to the previous slide to show the first level, exiting drivers would pick up their cars in the pedestrian waiting area on this entrance level. An attendant would be stationed on this level as well in the office adjacent to the entrance and would assist in retrieving cars. Building residents access the pedestrian waiting area by crossing the garage from the elevator. About 24% of the overnight parkers are residents of Yorkville, and the overnight occupancy rate is currently at 68% with 506 vehicles. The garage is open 24 hours a day, but a security gate closes at overnight hours. An attendant can be buzzed to retrieve cars. So these additional parking is located on the two lower levels, which are accessed by a series of ramps. These photos show the Rupert garage entrance as well as an exterior view of the residential tower. The entrance for the Rupert garage is located on the north side of one-way eastbound 90th Street, 288 feet from 3rd Avenue. Upon entering, cars proceed down a ramp past the first parking level. They proceed to the attendant station on the next level down, where drivers would stop in one of the 19 reservoir spaces and use the pedestrian access area to walk to the elevator to the lobby. Residents and non-residents can use the elevator to exit. As with Yorkville, this elevator only goes to the, from the garage up to the lobby or commercial space and does not connect or allow access to the residential portion of the building. A series of ramps provides access to the 3rd level down, which you see on the bottom of this slide. About 27% of the overnight parkers are residents of Rupert, and the overnight occupancy rate is currently at 168% with 370 vehicles. The garage is open 24 hours a day, but a security gate closes during overnight hours, and an attendant can be buzzed to retrieve the cars. Drivers, again, going back to the previous slide, this is the entrance level. So drivers who wish to retrieve their cars would approach an attendant in the garage office on this entrance level, and they'd wait in the pedestrian waiting area for an attendant to get their car. The special permits for Yorkville and Rupert require a residential growth parking study. The special permit for Knickerbocker allows them to seek additional parking spaces numbering up to 35% of the building's dwelling units, but information on all 3 garages was included in the study. The study found a net increase of 411 parking spaces, including the project during the 10-year look-back period, and an increase of 1,553 dwelling units. The proposed project has a parking ratio of 26.5%. In Community District 8, the maximum permitted number of off-street parking spaces to dwelling units is 35%. Section 13455 of the zoning resolution allows for increases in the number of spaces at existing accessory facilities. Subsection A2 allows for an increase of up to 35% of the total number of dwelling units in a building in Community Districts 7 and 8. For the Knickerbocker garage, the total number of spaces after the proposed increase would be 202, or 35% of 578 dwelling units in Knickerbocker Plaza. For Yorkville and Rupert, Section 13455 also allows for an increase pursuant to subsection A1, which requires a residential growth parking study. Parking study is in your briefing package, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll note that this application is a cleanup reflecting what is currently occurring at the sites. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Thanks. I know these are really popular garages on the Upper East Side. I'm just wondering if there's any intention of, even though I understand there is still no requirement, for the developer to put in electric charging stations or to have the capacity to convert to electric charging stations.
That's actually part of the findings, so there is something in the works as far as that. Yeah.
Okay, well, is this coming back to us or are we voting?
Yeah, this is just starting the public review process.
It's not part of the findings, but I think they've indicated that they would be willing to put some in, and I think they actually have some in the garages. And we'll get the numbers on exactly how many are in each garage, whether they're universal chargers or whether they're for Tesla-only vehicles.
Terrific. It just seems in the mayor's own efforts to become more energy efficient, the more we can get these into projects, even though they are not still required, the better.
Other questions? Commissioner Delahoo's.
So maybe just a clarifying question to your point, Chair. So is it an entire cleanup to legalize the excess parking, or is there any additional legal parking being created?
What they're basically doing is they're sort of reorganizing the interior space. There's some areas that are used for storage now that they're going to open up to store the additional cars. So they've taken an inventory of how many cars are parking there, and they're accommodating that. So.
And discovered hundreds more.
And also cleaning up the queuing situation on the street, a much more rational approach to parking. Yes, Commissioner Levin.
But that does beg the question, why these applications now? Are they doing interior work in the building that needs a building permit, or they somehow got caught up in bureaucracy here? I mean, my sense is that there are an awful lot of garages in Manhattan that have this, and probably elsewhere in the city that have this same condition, and you kind of let a sleeping dog lie until it has to do something. Yeah.
They've received a number of violations with fines, so I think that's really what's driving this.
Thank you. That'll do it.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Ortiz?
Yeah, along the lines, with respect to electronic vehicles, I think it would be helpful to know about other alternative modes of transportation and the degree to which there is, available bike parking, either within the building or potentially within, this parking facility, given how popular cycling has become in the city.
Yeah,
helpful to know.
I can get you the numbers on the bike parking. They do have a series of bike rooms that store a significant number of bikes. So.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that a lot of these buildings, those facilities are really overprescribed now, and the bike parking is very, very popular. And obviously, if you can store a bike, you might think about not having two cars or maybe, reducing your car usage. So I do think these things are connected, and it would be helpful to know if they need more bike parking. This could be an opportunity to get it.
Sure.
Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
Item 8, page 241, is a non-ULURP post-referral renewal of a previously approved authorization in Manhattan Community District 10. Our presenter is Calvin Brown.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This application is a renewal of a previously approved authorization to facilitate a development at 223-237 St. Nicholas Avenue in Manhattan Community District 10. This is not the location, though.
Okay. It's okay. He's just...
We're moving uptown.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, here we go. We're in Harlem now. Okay, so like I said, this is a renewal of a previously approved authorization to allow the maximum building height to increase by 15 feet to facilitate the development of a mixed-use building located at 223-237 St. Nicholas Avenue in Manhattan Community District 10. The subject site is located on the west side of St. Nicholas Avenue between West 121st and West 122nd Street, and is situated in two zoning districts, an R8A and an R7A. Along the R8A portion, there's a commercial overlay, which is along St. Nicholas Avenue. The subject site is just south of 125th Street, which is a major commercial corridor in Harlem, and just north of the intersection where Frederick Douglass Boulevard and St. Nicholas Avenue cross. The R8A and the R7A are both contextual zoning districts that have maximum street wall and maximum building heights. As we can see in the pictures, the predominant use in the area is residential, but there are commercial uses along both Frederick Douglass Boulevard and St. Nicholas Avenue. In 2013, the Commission granted approval of an authorization pursuant to Section 6322 to allow the maximum building height of this building to increase by 15 feet. So going from 120 feet to 135 feet. At the time of the approval, the R8A had a maximum building height of 120 feet. And this was done in conjunction with a chair certification that certified that the supermarket that will be located on the ground floor would be a fresh supermarket. That was a food retail expansion to support health, fresh. As part of this authorization, the commission had to make the findings that the ground floor finishing ceiling to floor height had to be 14 feet, as well that the modification in granting the additional height was necessary to accommodate the fresh food store, and that it would not adversely affect the essential scale and character of the surrounding area or buildings or adjacent historic resources, and that the modifications would not unduly obstruct access to light and air of the adjacent properties. The applicant also received during this time a BSA variance for the proposed for lot coverage, for a waiver to reduce the amount of parking, and to locate commercial uses in the portion of the R7A district. In 2017, the BSA approved a 4-year extension of the time to complete the construction. The renewal of this authorization along with the BSA approval would facilitate the development of a 13-story building containing residential uses and a commercial use in the form of the fresh food store, which would be approximately 1,600 square feet. And this just shows where the red circle is, where the additional 15 feet was allocated for this building. Pursuant to Section 1143, which states that the authorization automatically lapses unless substantial construction of the project is completed within 4 years of the effective date of the authorization, the Commission, pursuant to the section, may renew the authorization without a public hearing for 2 additional 3-year terms, provided that the Commission finds the facts upon which the authorization were granted have not substantially changed. And that concludes the presentation.
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Deleuze.
Can you just repeat one more time what the BSA application was and whether or not it changes anything substantially related to the project?
Yes, so they got a variance for lot coverage to locate portions of the fresh store in the R7A. So the commercial overlay is along St. Nicholas Avenue, and a portion of the store extends in the R7A district. So they needed a variance for that, and they wanted to reduce the amount of parking that was required.
Other questions? Okay, then I will ask for an assent by show of hands to renew the authorization. Okay, renewed.
Thank you.
Item 9, page 257, is a non-ULURP post-referral of a renewal of a previously approved special permit in Manhattan Community District 5. Now a seasoned veteran of presenting to the commission, Connor Clark.
Okay, so This is a private application by 249 West 28th Street Properties LLC for a second renewal to a previously approved special permit for a 190-space public parking garage granted by the CPC in August of 2011 pursuant to zoning resolution sections 13562, which has been superseded, and 7452. Property is located at 241-251 West 28th Street in Manhattan Community District 5. The first renewal was granted in July of 2016, along with a modification that included a reduction in the proposed number of parking spaces from 325 to 190, and a redesign of the proposed facility. The area map has the development site in gray outlined in red in the center. It is located in an M16D zoning district in the Chelsea neighborhood just south of Madison Square Garden and Penn Station. The Penn South Affordable Co-op with 10 buildings and 2,800 units is located less than a block to the west, and the Fashion Institute of Technology takes up 2 blocks immediately south of the development site. The development site is a through lot between West 28th and West 29th Streets and consists of blocks 7, 7, 8, lots 13, 16, 18, and 66. All lots are currently vacant. Lots 13, 16, and 18 were previously occupied by 371 public parking spaces. The development site was recently subject to 3 zoning actions in 2011, a special permit for a public parking garage, which is the focus of this renewal application, and an area-wide rezoning and map amendment, along with 48 other tax lots. The rezoning was from an M15 manufacturing district, which does not permit residential use, to a mixed-use M16D district, which permits residential use under certain circumstances. This was the first M16D established in the city. The intent of the M16D was to encourage new infill residential development while preserving commercial and manufacturing uses in the area. These photos show the project site. The first photo is the view of the project site facing northeast from West 28th Street. The second is the view facing southeast from West 29th Street. So you can see both sides of the block here. As approved in 2016, the modified design of the garage would have 2 entrances, one each on West 29th and West 28th Streets. Drivers would use either entrance and proceed to the passenger unloading zone, where the attendant would load the vehicle onto the elevator to be parked on the cellar level. Exiting cars would leave the elevator, get picked up by drivers at the passenger loading zone, and proceed out the single exit on West 29th Street, which is to the left of this drawing. This drawing shows the cellar level of the garage where all the parking will be located, including 80 stackers. The applicant is seeking renewal of the parking special permit for a 3-year term. A special permit automatically lapses unless substantial construction of the project is completed within 4 years of the effective date of the special permit, or unless the special permit is renewed. The special permit was approved and became effective on September 21st, 2011. It was renewed on July 11th, 2016, and this renewal expired on September 21st, 2018. The expiration occurred after the applicant filed for the second renewal, which allows the current special permit to remain in effect pending the renewal application. Section 1143 allows for the special permit as modified to be renewed for a second and final time, provided the facts have not substantially changed. This would push the expiry date to September 21st, 2021. On October 12th, Community Board 5 voted to recommend approval of the special permit renewal with 30 votes in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining. So please note that the vote tally in your briefing package, which indicated that there was 1 vote opposed, has been revised. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the commission? Okay, then I will again ask for an assent by show of hands to this renewal. Okay, done.
Okay, item 10, page 277, is a pre-hearing review of an amendment to an urban renewal plan and disposition of city-owned property in Manhattan Community District 6. Scott Williamson is our presenter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. So this is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development for a disposition of city-owned property and an amendment to the Waterside Urban Renewal Plan. The changes will facilitate the long-term affordability of up to 325 units, in addition to maintaining enhanced Section 8 voucher arrangements for 92 tenants in the Waterside Plaza development. It's in the Kips Bay neighborhood of Manhattan Community District 6. It should be noted that these actions relate to renewing the ground lease only. No construction is proposed. So as a refresher, the site shown with the red dashed line is roughly bounded by East 30th Street to the north, the East River to the east, East 23rd Street to the south, and the elevated FDR Drive to the west. The site is zoned with a C27 zoning district. South of the project site is the United Nations International School, shown in blue, and Stuycove Park. To the west of the site is Assalevy Recreation Center, shown in green, and several institutional uses that make up the medical corridor, shown in blue and red on the map. The surrounding area is served by the local 6 subway line on Park Avenue. So in 1967, the Commission approved a series of actions that to facilitate the existing Waterside Plaza, including the establishment of an urban renewal plan. The Waterside Urban Renewal Plan was developed through the Mitchell-Lama program, and the property was disposed to a private developer in 1970 through a 99-year ground lease that is set to expire in 2069. The development was constructed in 1974. In 2001, a settlement agreement was negotiated in anticipation of the project's exit from the Mitchell-Lama program and set forth updated ground lease payments. The agreement was effectuated when the development exited in 2005. The agreement included rental protections for approximately 450 tenants, consisting of enhanced Section 8 vouchers and favorable rent with annual rent increases for existing tenants whose units had been subject to the Mitchell-Lama program. So the existing condition at Waterside Plaza is it consists of a central podium building that includes retail, offices, community facilities, parking, and a rooftop open space. The podium ranges in height from 2 to 5 stories and connects 4 residential towers along the building's northern, eastern, and southern sides. The towers range from 34 to 40 stories and contain 1,470 units. So again, this application does not involve any new construction. HPD seeks only the approval of a disposition of city-owned property, an amendment to the Waterside Urban Renewal Plan for a new 99-year term. It will facilitate the extension of the ground lease for the long-term affordability of up to 325 units, in addition to maintaining enhanced Section 8 voucher arrangements for 92 tenants in the existing development. The applicant's proposed amendment to the URP is included in the briefing package. So for public review, Manhattan Community Board 6 voted in favor of the application without conditions at its full board meeting of September 12. 34 voted in favor of the application, none were against, and 4 abstained. The borough president submitted a recommendation of approval on October 16, also without conditions. So at the certification, commissioners posed a number of questions on the application. Specifically, there was a question on whether the affordable units being preserved through the proposed lease arrangement agreement were in a single building or if they were spread across the development. HPD has advised that the affordable units are currently spread across all buildings, and that's proposed to continue. Another question was raised on how the East River Esplanade interacts with the Waterside Plaza development and whether there are future plans for the waterfront path to be integrated, noting the existing path to the west can be challenging to navigate, particularly for cyclists. So the figure on the left shows the East River Greenway path as it exists today. The blue line adjacent to Waterside Plaza indicates the mingling of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic along this stretch of the Greenway path. Currently, pedestrians can also walk along the waterfront through the Waterside Plaza property during daylight hours, after which it is closed off, but cyclists are not permitted due to safety concerns. Waterside ownership has been cooperating with DOT to improve safety along this stretch of the Greenway path. Waterside ownership has shown a willingness to add signage should it be requested by the city. Full-time public pedestrian and bicycle access to the waterfront has been explored by DOT in the past, but talks stalled over indemnity for incidents that may occur on the waterside property. DOT has advised that longer term, it would like to pursue dedicated bicycle paths along the waterfront. To date, its efforts and capital have been focused on sections of Manhattan's coastline with no connectivity to the Esplanade network or connections in significant states of disrepair. There was also a question on whether the Waterside Plaza Esplanade leasehold status and responsibility. HPD has advised that the path to the east of the development along the waterfront is part of the leasehold responsibility. Therefore, accessibility and safety along the waterfront is incumbent on Waterside Plaza. And finally, there were questions on whether HPD had conducted any fair value appraisals for the waterside property, and a question was raised on how the open space was represented in the lease. So both of those we would refer to HPD, who can speak directly on those questions at Wednesday's public hearing. I'm happy to answer any further questions you might have.
Questions from the Commission. Commissioner Abdiz.
Thank you. I believe I raised the concern about the section of non-separated path. And that's sort of a generous description for what's happening there. I happened to have spent the day there yesterday. My son had a chess tournament there. And, you know, it's really quite uncomfortable. I mean, for those who bike along, and to have that be the one section where there's no dedicated path. Certainly, I appreciate that they say they might consider wayfinding if we request it, and I would say I do, certainly. I don't know about the city. But, you know, I do think for public safety reasons, we have to think about how we make that path safe for cyclists, because it's a dedicated, bike path up and down, but for that section. And so children of all ages are biking along there. It's not a city street, but but there it functions as one, yet it's supposed to be part of this continuous bike path. So I think we need more than just wayfinding. Thank you. And I'd like to see the developer speak to that. Sure. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so this will go to public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Item 11, page 334, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Queens Community District 10. Hala Sela is our presenter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application by Cohansey Realty, LLC, for a zoning map change to establish a C22 commercial overlay in an existing R3X district to facilitate the development of an auto service station and convenience store in Ozone Park, Queens. The site is adjacent to a highway service road off the westbound exit of Belt Parkway. It is also serviced by the A train and the Q11 bus route. The project area consists of a commercial contractor yard to the north, the Aqueduct Racetrack and Casino to the east, and vacant properties and detached or semi-detached 1- and 2-family residential homes to the west. The applicant's property is currently vacant and is approximately 209 feet from a limited access highway. These are some photos of the surrounding area to show the character and existing uses. The proposed zoning map amendment would establish a C22 commercial overlay. The applicant believes this site is better suited for local retail uses and neighborhood services due to its access. Automotive service stations are not permitted as of right, and the applicant will need to obtain a BSA special permit. The proposed development will consist of 8 fuel pumps, 1-story convenience store, and 13 accessory parking spaces. The site is proposed with 4 30-foot wide curb cuts, which have been reviewed preliminarily by DOT, recommending that either all traffic exit onto Cohansey Street or that the curb cut closest to the train be exit only. Signage and lighting plans are also included in your briefing materials. The item was certified on August 20th, 2018, and the Community Board recommended approval with 28 members voting in favor, none against or abstaining. 2 members of the community shared concerns related to traffic, and the Community Board plans to take a closer look at the curb cuts proposed in the site plan during the BSA action. The Community Board and the Queensborough President recommended approval with the condition that a restrictive declaration be filed to prohibit hotel use on the applicant's property. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
It all seemed very clear, but I was a little confused by that. Would the change in zoning allow for a hotel?
Yes.
Okay.
It would allow for a hotel as of right.
Okay. And I guess we'll hear about pro or con and restrictive declaration on Wednesday.
Other questions? Okay, so this is another item for Wednesday's public hearing.
Item 12, page 357, is a pre-hearing review of a UDAP designation and disposition in the Bronx Community District 6. Here to present is Takia Jordan.
The project I'm going to review today was before the commission on August 6, 2018. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. The project site is located in Bronx Community District 6 in the Fordham Belmont neighborhood. The New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development seeks UDAP designation and approval of disposition of city-owned property at 4697 3rd Avenue. The actions would facilitate a mixed-use development comprised of 52 units of affordable housing and about 9,000 square feet of retail space. The site is located along 3rd Avenue between Cyrus Place and East 188th Street. The surrounding neighborhood has a wide mix of uses and is just south of Fordham Plaza, which is a major commercial and transportation hub in the center of the borough. The site is currently vacant. In 2010, the project area was rezoned from a C83 district to the current C45X as part of the 3rd Avenue, Tremont Avenue rezoning. Here are some photos of the project site, which you can see most clearly in the upper left-hand photo along the right side of the image. And the others are also of the project site and show you 3rd Avenue, which is a wide street, in Cyrus Place, which runs along the south of the site. This is a rendering of the planned development. It is 8-story mixed use with over 50,000 square feet of residential space and again about 9,000 square feet of commercial. Many building amenities are planned for residents, but there will be no parking on the site. There was some discussion about the building facade when I was here for certification. The developer has actually changed some of the aspects of the building design, and that's shown here in the rendering. I think most specifically the color of the trim, which I think they've settled on a brick tone. This application was before the Community Board on September 12th. And the Community Board held a public hearing and vote. On that date, there was no public comment on the application. The Community Board recommended approval of the application with 23 in favor, 1 opposed, and 3 abstentions. While there was no public comment, some Community Board members did voice concerns about no resident parking being planned for the site. The Bronx Borough President's Office held their hearing on October 18th and subsequently issued a recommendation for approval of the application. Oh, this is, okay. Well, in addition to questions and concerns about the facade, there was also some discussion of the project's affordability. And so I was able to obtain additional information about that. And the project is currently proposed to have a mix of units between 15 and 80% of AMI. So that's a pretty wide range of incomes that are being targeted by HPD and the developer. There's a mix of equity in the project, but the developer will be following the extremely low and low income affordability, or ELA term sheet, HPD's ELA program, which includes a 10% set aside for the formerly homeless. Currently, the median income in the area is about $25,000, which computes to about 30% AMI. So there is a pretty aggressive mix of incomes that they're targeting, and they always say is subject to change. But that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them as best I can.
Questions? Okay, so this will go to public hearing on Wednesday.
Okay.
Item 13, page 376, is a pre-hearing review of a site selection and acquisition of in Staten Island Community District 3. George Todorovic is here to present.
Okay.
Sorry, George.
It's all right, Ryan. Thanks.
It's properly pronounced how?
Todorovic.
Thank you.
Todorovic.
Yeah, Eastern European, one of those tongue twisters. All right, good afternoon, commissioners. This is an application submitted by the Parks Department and DCAS for the acquisition and site selection of 2 privately owned parcels to facilitate both the preservation and future expansion of Olmsted Beal House Park. The project area is located near Great Kills Harbor in the Eltingville neighborhood of Staten Island's Community District 3. The project site consists of 2 tax lots located along Highland Boulevard, outlined in red on the area map, Lot 80 to the east and Lot 99 to the west. The project site totals approximately 53,000 square feet of lot area and 133 feet of frontage along Highland Boulevard. Lot 80 is a 40,777 square foot parcel that is developed with a detached single-family home built in the 1900s. The early 1900s, excuse me. It is accessed by a gravel driveway within the roadbed of Orchard Lane South that is shared with the adjacent property to the northeast, Lot 55. The New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation recently determined that the house is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, but LPC determined that the architectural and historic significance of the house does not rise to individual landmark status. Lot 99 is a 12,500 square foot vacant lot, which includes a 12-foot wide easement that provides access to a private residence on Lot 100 and is also used by DPR staff to access Olmsted Beal House Park. This 12-foot wide easement is currently the only access to Olmsted Beal House Park. And since Lot 99 is a flag lot, the majority is set back from Highland Boulevard behind Lot 95. So after being certified on September 4th, Staten Island CB3 held a public hearing on September 12th and held a vote on September 24th, recommending unanimous approval, 29 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. And the Staten Island Borough President submitted a letter recommending approval application on October 11th. And I can now take any questions.
Questions? Okay, another one sails through to Wednesday's public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Item 14, page 396, is a non-ULURP post-referral for city planning certification in Staten Island Community District 3. Alina Farishta is here to present.
Hello, good afternoon. The Outerbridge Commons application was presented to the Commission on June 5th, 2017, and referred out to Community Board 3 in Staten Island. Since then, the applicant team has updated this application, and I'll be walking through both the initial proposal and the updated version. The applicant is seeking a certification for a future zoning lot subdivision in the Special South Richmond Development District. The site is located in the Richmond Valley neighborhood of Community District 3 of Staten Island in an M11 district. The area is characterized primarily by commercial development, light industrial uses, and low-density residential communities. The site is one of a large number of undeveloped parcels in this area, most of which contain wetlands regulated by the Army Corps and state DEC. This site is within a recognized ecological complex called Outerbridge Ponds and Woodlands, and it has frontage on both Page Avenue and Richmond Valley Road, which are major arterials on the South Shore. The 12.5 acre zoning lot remains undeveloped at present with a wooded character. The site contains DEC regulated wetlands in adjacent area, which are outlined in navy blue, and Army Corps regulated wetlands outlined in teal blue. In 2007, the commission approved a zoning lot subdivision, and this zoning lot was created to allow development outside of the DEC 100-foot adjacent area. Subsequently, the owners of the zoning lot completed a tax lot subdivision, which are shown here in Lot 17 and Lot 80, with Lot 17 mostly comprised of DEC wetlands. The applicant is requesting a zoning lot subdivision that would follow these existing tax lot boundaries. The area plan shown on this slide was the initial proposal that was presented to the commission and referred out to Community Board 3 of June and last year. As required for zoning lots that are greater than 5 acres, the applicants have provided an area plan which shows the proposed vehicular circulation system and to note any areas to remain undeveloped. Both development schemes, as shown on this plan, would require future commission approvals. The subdivision would allow the applicant to advance applications for both of these lots independently. On this area plan, Lot 80 proposes 1- and 2-story commercial buildings with retail uses with 2 curb cuts along Page Avenue. No vehicular cross-access was proposed between the 2 lots. A permit was received by the Army Corps for Lot 80, and then they have designated an area of no disturbance on the southern tail portion, which is shown in teal blue. For Lot 17, the proposal included retail and office and warehouse uses and an underground parking to accommodate their parking. The development was proposed within the 100-foot adjacent area, and 60 feet from the wetlands were proposed as a designated area of no disturbance, which was coordinated with the DEC. The Department of City Planning had raised concerns regarding that area plan's ability to meet the goals of the South Richmond District and the conditions of the future subdivision certification. And during public review, the Community Board also expressed concerns for the proposed area plan and recommended that the Commission should disapprove the proposal. In summary, concerns were raised regarding potential traffic impacts to Page Avenue given the number of proposed curb cuts and the lack of cross-access between the development sites, and also believe that the subdivision would decrease opportunities for aesthetic enjoyment of open space, could result in loss of wetlands, and increase local flooding in the area. In response to these concerns, the applicant submitted an updated future subdivision proposal, which is shown here on this slide. Although the zoning lot boundaries have not been altered in the proposal, the area plan shows that future development would be located outside of the 100-foot DEC regulated wetland areas on Lot 17, and they've designated that entire area as an area of no disturbance. And the applicant is in the process of updating and modifying their application to DEC. A new cross-access connection was proposed between both of these lots. And they've also proposed a reduction in curb cuts on Lot 17. And the area plan also results in other changes to the parking lot layout and other interior circulation and uses. So in summary, the request for certification of future subdivision requires that the commission certify that upon subdivision, the existing topography and trees to the great extent possible are preserved under future development options and complies with the approved South Richmond plan. So if the area plan were to be approved by the commission, the proposed subdivision layout and areas of no disturbance would be binding and recorded against the property. However, the other elements demonstrated on the area plan are for informational purposes and would require future discretionary approvals by the commission. Thank you.
To emphasize that last point, that the area plan, that subdivision approval should not be equated with approval of the area plan, and the applicant has been informed of that, and that any development on either of the sites would require a return to the commission. The applicants, because the tax lots are now in two separate ownerships, they wanted to separate the projects, and they'll each proceed on their own time frame. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Marin.
I have a question concerning the wetlands. So on lot 80, it appears that they're going to be filling in 2 areas of wetlands, 3 areas of wetlands. And that appears to be from the topography on a higher plane. So is the idea that they're going to move those wetlands or the capacity of those wetlands to the northern portion, excuse me, to the western portion of lot 80, north above lot 17?
That's correct. They received a permit to fill in the wetlands on Lot 80, the Army Corps, and then that would be a mitigated wetland area.
So then they would redirect water towards that
Right.
northwestern quadrant.
That is what's proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, then we'll schedule this for a vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I'm not sure it's a coincidence out on the South Shore of Staten Island that the wetland's shaped a little bit like an elephant head, but I couldn't help looking at the screen and seeing the shape there. And it's blue. Well, that goes to show you. I just want to acknowledge, this is a long time coming. This application's been around for a very long time. And I want to acknowledge the sort of thoughtful nature of the community board's recommendation in terms of taking this issue on, but then also acknowledge the work that the applicant has done to try to address those concerns. So it's good that we've finally gotten to the point that we've gotten to. So thank you. And of course, thank you to the staff for the work they've done in this project too.
Certainly far improved from the first time the commission saw it. Okay, so we will vote this out on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elena. There are several city council modifications that are before the commission for scope determination. The first is 3901 9th Avenue rezoning in Brooklyn Community District 12. Here the council is proposing to eliminate the mandatory inclusionary housing option 2 from the proposal.
And so I would ask for an assent by show of hands to send the council a letter saying it's within scope. Okay, done.
The second is the Variety Boys and Girls Club rezoning in Queens Community District 1. Here the council is proposing to amend the mandatory inclusionary housing to add option 1 to the proposal.
Okay, same letter, same assent by show of hands. Okay, so done.
And finally, at 110 East 16th Street in Manhattan Community District 5, here the city council is proposing a reduction in the number of parking spaces. If I recall, it's from 23 to 18. The Manhattan office is present to answer any questions with this.
Any questions? Okay, if not, assent by show of hands to send an in-scope mod letter. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to future votes. On October 31st, staff have prepared reports for the following. The Marcus Garvey Large Scale General Development. Anthony have anything? I don't believe there were anything. I know there were materials in your package. I believe we've addressed, I think, everything that's come. Okay, I'm seeing nods. I like that. Okay, the Franklin Avenue rezoning. Hans Christian Kindergarten landmark. 238 President Street landmark. 420 Kent Avenue, which was an authorization on the waterfront. And the Garment Center text amendment. Any further discussion on Garment Center? Okay. Also Outer Bridge Commons, which we just saw. And then 76 Egan Avenue, Staten Island Community District 3. 145 Waterbury Avenue on Staten Island Community District 3. 115 Canton Avenue on Staten Island Community District 3. And 360 West 253rd Street in Bronx Community District 8.
Before we move on, if I could just note that we've distributed to the commission in connection with 110 East 16th Street, one of the council mods, a letter that I received from council member Rivera asking about the Adorama, the so-called Adorama question, and my response letter to her. It wasn't part of the action before us, but I thought that the commission might find it of interest. Yes.
I appreciate the letter being distributed, and I think it's helpful to, further clarify what people would like to see happen versus what is allowed to happen. The one thing that I also think is always very helpful as it relates to whether or not MIH applies is, I know in your letter, for instance, you talk about a substantial increase in permitted residential density. I guess depending on the situation, 12,500 square feet may or may not, in my mind, be substantial. So I know when I'm talking to people about clarifying what is allowed, that reference to the actual square footage is very helpful.
And actually, to your point, it is a case-by-case determination of what would be significant.
Moving on to the post-hearing follow-ups. On 29 J Street rezoning, there may have been a response in your package, although from my recollection is that the hearing was rather comprehensive on 29 J Street. I'm seeing nods around that as well. Okay, and then moving on to the Two Bridges large-scale residential development where Bob Tuttle is here to present.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So this is a post-hearing follow-up for 3 independent land use applications that each seek modifications to different zoning lots within the same large-scale residential development in the Two Bridges neighborhood of Community District 3. JDS Development is the applicant for the 247 Cherry Street site. L&M Development Partners and CIM Group are the co-applicants for the 260 South Street site, and Starrett Development is the applicant for the 259 Clinton Street site. At today's session, we'll discuss most of the post-hearing topics, including testimony we heard about tenant harassment, the Commission's purview regarding modification actions, testimony about specific issues related to Parcel 6B and Parcel 4, and the affordable housing regime proposed by the applicants. The DIS comment period ends today, so we'll hold our discussion regarding environmental review-related issues until the next review session on November 13th. If there are additional issues you would like to be added to the November 13th review session agenda, we can discuss that at the end of today's presentation. And so now we'll begin with the first item on the agenda. So the Commission heard testimony from rent-stabilized tenants at 51 and 53 Monroe Street, who alleged harassment by their landlord. City Planning's Council Division has been in touch with the Tenant Harassment Prevention Task Force about this testimony. The task force is considering how to proceed, and the department will keep the commission informed of any developments. And just for the public's information, the task force consists of state agencies, including the Attorney General's Office and Homes and Community Renewal, and city agencies, including the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the Department of Buildings, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and the Law Department, among others. Are there any questions on this topic?
Yes, Commissioner Delahoo's.
So I'm wondering if one of the things that's being considered is whether or not this potential harassment would be subject to the new legislation under the Certificate of No Harassment Program, and then potentially trigger a cure if harassment were to be found. If that's something you could follow up on, that would be helpful. I'm seeing a lot of perplexed looks. There's legislation that was passed by the City Council that, obviously not just during rezonings, but in individual targeted buildings, if harassment is suspected and then found, that beyond MIH would trigger an additional 20% affordable housing.
Correct.
Yes, Commissioner Levin.
You know, we heard a lot of impassioned testimony, not only about harassment, but also about displacement, and I realize those are two separate issues, but tending more toward the potential harassment side of things. I think CB3 gave us some information claiming 185 eviction cases were filed at Rutgers Slip alone. And we had a couple of Rutgers Slip tenants speaking to that. It was hard to tell whether they were claiming things that really arose to eviction cases or just strong talk. But I wonder if staff has looked into, in particular, that claim about the 185 eviction cases, and potentially whether there's any whiff of tenant harassment at Rutgers Slip.
Okay, we can follow up on that.
Thank you.
Okay, then, so at past review sessions, we've discussed quite a bit about how a modification to a large-scale development plan is determined, and we'll discuss that further in a moment. But I wanted to take an opportunity to explain why the Two Bridges large-scale plan exists in the first place. So in 1967, an urban renewal plan was adopted to address the deteriorating conditions in the area. And from 1972 to 1995, buildings were constructed to fulfill the objectives of the urban renewal plan. Many of the buildings did not comply with the zoning regulations, and so required waivers for things such as the building setback from the street, the distance between buildings, and the lot's yard regulations. All of these waivers were allowed via an authorization or special permit within the sections of the zoning resolution that pertain to large-scale residential developments, which is Article 7, Chapter 8. Now, when the Two Bridges Urban Renewal Plan expired by its own terms in 2007, the large-scale residential development site plan became a vestige of the Urban Renewal Plan. The large-scale plan continues to be necessary so that the buildings within it remain compliant with the zoning waivers that were granted by the Commission. However, the large-scale plan is not intended to perpetuate the objectives of the expired urban renewal plan. Now, the Commission heard testimony from multiple parties challenging the determination that these applications are minor modifications to the large-scale development. And the parties generally argued that the proposed developments are too large to be considered minor and therefore should require a ULURP. Now, while the proposed developments are indeed large, the size of the developments is not an operative factor for the minor mod determination for this project. Rather, the determination is based on the fact that these buildings would require no waivers or modifications to the zoning regulations to be built. That is, the proposed buildings comply with all of the underlying zoning regulations and do not require authorizations, special permits, or other zoning actions aside from the modification to the large-scale plan and floor area calculations. Now, the Commission cannot, of its own initiative, require a ULURP for a project that does not fall under one of the categories enumerated in Section 197C of the City Charter. nor can the commission of its own initiative require a special permit for a project that is not seeking waivers to use, bulk, or parking regulations that require a special permit under the zoning resolution. So an attempt by the commission to require a ULURP or special permit for such a project would go beyond the powers of the commission under the city charter and zoning. And are there any questions on this piece?
Yes, Commissioner Delahoo's.
Is there, I'm going to go back to the first part of what you shared, Bob, in terms of that the large scale isn't intended to perpetuate the goals of an urban renewal plan. Where is that delineated?
So an urban renewal plan expires by its own terms, and it uses as a tool of development the large scale residential development zoning regulations, which have these special permits and authorizations that can allow for flexibility in that site plan. But nowhere is it within an urban renewal plan that it needs to be perpetuated through a large scale. It's conceivable that the development for an urban renewal plan could happen without a large scale. But we've just seen a lot of instances where they tend to happen together, and it gives the impression possibly that they're meant to forever be aligned and that the large scale has to continue on an urban renewal plan. But in fact, urban renewal plans have expirations, and they're built into the plans, and they can be continued, but they don't need to be. But the large scale does not have an expiration, and it has to continue to exist because the commissioners before you have approved authorizations and special permits. And if the large scale went away, all of those buildings would become non-compliant and would create major issues for Department of Buildings. So the large scale now sits there to make sure that these buildings continue to be compliant with the approvals that they've had in the past. But again, the urban renewal plan had a 40-year term, and that expired.
Commissioner Efron.
So is it safe to say that the changes are not minor in size, but they are minor in relation to zoning?
Correct.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, well, Bob, I guess I would fully respect the line of analysis that leads to your point of view, but I also think that if you work your way through the ULURP rules and the LSRD rules and the previous actions that took place on this site, one could very easily also get to the conclusion that was urged on us by the community board and the borough president and the council member, and I would say myself, that this does not qualify as a minor modification and is rather larger than that, and shouldn't be allowed to be considered as a minor modification. So maybe I'll just end my comments there. There's not much more to say, but I think there are adequate legal arguments that get you to the place that says that this is not something that we should be considering as a minor modification. I would note in response to your comments that if you read the, there's a previous action, the previous minor modification that happened within recent memory, and that was for the healthcare chaplaincy.
Right.
And that indeed, I have to recognize, is a precedent for approaching a substantial piece of development as a minor modification. That one was approved, I think, rather enthusiastically by this commission and also by the community board, because it was to provide for community facility use, fill in a parking lot, not take open space, didn't have anything like the environmental impacts that this project will have. But the application in that case went to pains to argue that the proposed development there was in fact consistent with the LSRD plan and specifically addressed the findings that are required by Article 78 for a large-scale plan. took much greater effort to argue the consistency of the healthcare chaplaincy proposal with what was intended by the LSRD. So I think the view at that time by the practitioners was that the LSRD was something more than a vestige and something that did have some control over what should happen. You know, I'm struck by the way that the ULURP rules work. They set out a number of considerations we're supposed to make in determining whether this is indeed a minor modification, and they typically come at us as council modifications, where we are asked to consider whether what the council is proposing to change is within this scope that's laid out in the ULURP rules. So I found myself wondering, so what if, just what if, the three or four new towers that are currently before us came to us as a council modification? What if we were considering a special permit that was consistent with all the LSRD stuff that's on the books now to approve all the stuff that has currently been built? And we set it up to the council. I realize this is preposterous because it would never happen this way, but we set it up to the council, and the council said, well, wait a minute, you're leaving out these three large parcels, and we think you should just fill them up according to zoning. And they sent us back a modification that had the Two Bridges proposals. Would we accept that as being within scope?
If they provided us
I'm
with
not so
an
sure.
FEIS, we might.
Right. Well, I also think if you're reading but I think the fact that I mean, that is truly a hypothetical, something that would never happen, but I think it illustrates the challenge that we're faced with here. I think we have a public that just can't understand how something like this could not possibly need the kind of public review that we're used to with a ULURP, and I tend to agree that, you know, taking a project that's so large, that requires so much additional environmental work, that has environmental impacts that have to be mitigated in some very positive ways, I will say, with respect to the transit improvements, but also leave some unmitigated impacts. Those can't possibly be a minor modification.
And again, the department is not taking the position that this is a minor project, but rather under
No, I'm speaking in the legal sense, as whether it qualifies under our own ULURP rules as something that can be approved as a minor modification. And I don't expect for a minute I'm going to persuade anyone at city planning. I might persuade a few of my colleagues, but that's just how I feel about it. And I'm not arguing that we should require a ULURP. I accept and recognize that that's not our purview here. We can't do that. But if we're asked to consider this a minor modification, just can't do that.
Though I will note that because of the fact that we accept that this is significant development, it's why we required the joint EIS process to get at those mitigations that you noted.
Yes, so, and we will discuss those at the next post-hearing follow-up. I would also note that as we've stated before, we just don't do large scales like this anymore. And we know that this is a really challenging project for the public and the commission. But I guess we can just be assured that this is no longer our normal operating procedure. It's a vestige of a system that has been developed over decades. And I think that our system now is better than it was in 67 and 72 when the first authorization and special permit were done. But we are working, and I know that you understand this, we are working within the laws as we see them. We are trying to do the best work that we possibly can, which gets at the chair's point that this DIS is unprecedented in its scope of having three completely independent applicants having to work together to really let us fully see what the comprehensive types of impacts are going to be. And so we do look forward to having that more in-depth conversation about mitigation at the next meeting.
The other thing I'll note is that the council passed litigation requiring notice to communities in advance of the expiry of urban renewal plans, thus allowing an opportunity to look and say, hey, is the underlying zoning that was put in place, presumably 40 years earlier, still relevant? Yes, Commissioner Deleuze.
Actually, you're leading right into, I think, a question I have, which is there a complete analysis that could be shared with the commission about, of all the urban renewal plans that are expiring and what the underlying zoning is, so that we can be proactive in considering these things rather than reactive when the development community sees an opportunity?
So, hi. That's exactly what the legislation that the City Council passed is intended to have developed. And so we are charged with bringing on a couple of temporary staff who will assist us in going through all of those old urban renewal plans so that we get a very good inventory of those that have expired, what the underlying zoning is, so that it informs the council and the communities about whether or not they think there's something that should happen in terms of land use actions that would make the underlying zoning not necessarily be what is controlling. Because in the absence of that, it is the underlying zoning that is controlling.
Yes,
I
Commissioner
mean, I guess
Deleuze.
we'll see where this ends up, ultimately, the applicants may win the battle, but the war is going to live on, I think, in terms of this discussion. And so hopefully that will inform the, more comprehensive approach.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about this. I look at the way that the council legislation with regard to POPs led us to develop a database, a knowledge and understanding about POPs that far exceeded what we had before, and to create now the online database that allows members of the public to know what to expect. And I hope in instances where it's not being met, file more complaints about it. I do think that this work that is resulting from the council bill will help us in our understanding of where there are these soon to expire urban renewal areas.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up where Bob left off here and talk about some other legal issues. The commission heard testimony from a representative of Two Bridges Townhouse condominiums located on Site 6B within the LSRD. The representative argued that the applications should not be allowed to proceed in the absence of a written owner's authorization from the townhouse condominiums. When an owner within an LSRD applies for a minor modification, the department typically requires written statements of awareness from other fee owners in the LSRD. This is done to ensure that all owners within the LSRD have notice of the proposed minor modification. While the Two Bridges Townhouse condominiums have refused to provide a written statement of awareness for these applications from other fee owners for these applications, the department is satisfied, first, that the Two Bridges Townhouse condominiums is fully aware of the applications, and second, that the proposed applications do not affect the property interests or zoning interests controlled by the townhouses. The statement of awareness requirements for LSRDs is intended as a notice requirement. It is not intended to create a legal interest that enables an owner to demand payment to enable a proposed development on an unrelated site to proceed, especially given the fact that LSRDs may contain dozens of owners scattered across multiple blocks. The commission also heard testimony from a representative of Little Cherry LLC, which holds a lease on a portion of Site 4 within the LSRD. They asked the commission not to consider the application pending resolution of litigation on the extent of their property interests under their lease. This litigation does not affect the ability of the commission to consider the application before it. This is really a dispute about the extent of the plaintiff's property interests under the existing lease, but nothing being alleged would enable the plaintiff to prevent the fee owner from proceeding with an application. This litigation follows other claims by the same plaintiff that were dismissed by the court prior to the certification of this application. If successful here, which seems unlikely, the plaintiff would have to consent to a zoning lot merger to achieve the proposed development on Site 4. It is not uncommon for the commission to consider actions that facilitate developments that also depend on subsequent transactions in order to be realized. That eventuality does not prevent the commission from considering the application before it, which pertains to the regulations applying to the site, rather than the site's current or future arrangement of property interest. And if you have any question about any of these points, I'm happy to answer.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
And then the commission has asked for guidance on the proposed affordable housing components of these applications. So the applicants propose to create up to 694 units of permanently affordable housing under the R10 Inclusionary Housing Program and the Affordable New York, aka 421A, Option E. Now that represents 25% of all units, with 10% of the units at 40% AMI, 10% at 60% AMI, and 5% at 120% AMI. Now, 200 of these units are proposed to be senior affordable units. The applicants have agreed to make all units permanent pursuant to binding regulatory agreements with HPD. And just to add more color to statements that have previously been made regarding affordable housing program proposed for the new developments. The 694 units represent the greatest number of privately financed affordable units for any project in New York City history. These units would not use public land or city subsidy. And this represents the largest new construction affordable housing project in Manhattan. Any questions on the affordable housing regime?
Okay, we will be back at the November 13th review session to address issues that arose out of the joint DEIS and the public testimony that we heard. We couldn't do it today because the comment period ended yesterday, and we were receiving comments down to the wire.
The comment period ends today.
Oh, today?
Yes. So and we are still receiving comments.
As we speak.
Yes, my phone is vibrating right now. Now, I do want to note that based on some of the commissioners' comments during the DIS public hearing, we anticipate the topics to be covered at the next session will include the proposed shadow mitigation measures, an update regarding the applicant's engagement efforts with City Bike, and the applicant's responsibilities to implement mitigation measures. But please let me know if there are other environmental related issues you would like covered during the next post-hearing follow-up, and also if there are any other issues that you would like added to the next agenda.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. On the transportation alternatives, I saw the applicant's response, and I think my larger point was lost. It wasn't about City Bike. I used the example of the fact that there are no City Bikes available in the morning as an example of the need for transportation alternatives that could potentially impact the number of people who are using the subway. And simply because SECRA doesn't have us look at those alternative transportation modes, I don't think it should let the developer off the hook for telling us how they're going to try to encourage other kinds of transportation alternatives within their site. It's a 14-acre site. In their response, they said they would look at City Bike in close proximity to the site. I would encourage them to show us how they're going to incorporate transportation alternatives on the site. They're right on the bike path. That's a significant investment in public infrastructure that the city has made. They're walking distance from the ferry. Again, a significant investment in infrastructure that the city has made, and we haven't heard anything about how they're going to do their best to encourage the utilization of those transportation alternatives. So it's not a City Bike question, and I would very much like to see some acknowledgement of that.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Efron.
I think it's already included within your environmental impact, but just more specificity about the public open space and what is actually private public open space and what is public open space and who's responsible for what, and the timing of it.
Sure.
Yes,
How the entrance to 82 Peck Slip can work within that open space.
The entrance to
82 Peck Slip, the building.
Okay.
We heard testimony about how that was going to be a challenge.
Okay, I think that wraps up our meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this concludes the New York City Planning Commission review session for Monday, October 29th. The time is 3:41.
And I'll note that our public meeting will be on Halloween. I hope we have some costumed commissioners and also people testifying.